Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going over the next episode in my Finding My Letterboxd 4 series.
What are your four favorite films?
My four favorite films that you've seen. Four, huh?
I'm not ready for this. Okay. We can do this.
Now if you're new to this channel or new to this series, basically all this is I started this series by showing you what my current Letterboxd 4 was, and then I've just been going back and I've been rewatching some of my all-time favorite films to try and see if my Letterboxd 4 is actually up to date, or if it's just kind of skewing a little bit more recency biased and I'm not, giving consideration to some films that I hadn't seen in a long time. And so that's what this series is just going through some of my all-time favorite films. Now, the nature of talking about, like, your all-time favorites is usually you're talking about, like, the best of the best. You're talking about these films that are consensus. Everyone loves these films. And this is my 7th video that I've done in this series. So let's just take a look at like the previous 6 and like their Letterboxd average rating. So first is, Parasite at a 4.5, Portrait of a Lady on Fire with a 4.4, Little Women has a 4.2, Get Out 4.1, Moneyball 3.9. So 5 of the 6 videos that I've already done have had, they're obviously consensus, like everyone loves these. These are a lot of people's favorite films. They're in a lot of people's Letterboxd 4, and it kind of makes sense. Like, in order for it to be like one of the best films, like if it's something that I love so much, chances are a lot of people love it too. But there are a couple. So there's one in this series that I've already posted, and this video is going to go into that category as well, where they're more so movies that are like, for me, they're my movies. They're not necessarily the consensus that everyone loves them. They're still, so the one is Sinister, that I've done a video on. That has a 3.3 on Letterboxd. This film, today's video, this movie is the lowest. It's lower than Sinister. And it comes in at a 3.1. And it's one of those films that I know that not everyone loves, but I love it a bunch.
It's a race. It's a race. I'm winning. I'm winning.
In an ensemble film about easy money, greed, manipulation, and bad driving, a Las Vegas casino tycoon entertains his wealthiest high rollers, a group that will bet on anything, by pitting 6 ordinary people against each other in a wild dash for $2 million jammed into a locker hundreds of miles away. The tycoon and his wealthy friends monitor each racer's every move to keep track of their favorites. The only rule in this race is that there are no rules. The film stars Rowan Atkinson as Enrico Pollini, Whoopi Goldberg as Vera Baker, Seth Green as Dwayne Cody, John Lovitz as Randy Pear, and John Cleese as Donald Sinclair. Rat Race is a comedy adventure released in 2001 and was directed by Jerry Zucker. The film is rated PG-13 for sexual references, crude humor, partial nudity, and language. Now again, I understand that this is, like I said, this is a film that I'm not expecting a lot of people to have even seen. I follow a decent amount of people, I would say, on Letterboxd, and I think only 4 people of the people that I follow have even, like, logged it. Only 2 people have rated it, and one of them is one of my best friends that I love watching movies with, and he gave it, like, a 2-star. So I understand that this isn't a movie that's for a lot of people. I understand that this is one that you either just haven't seen, or if you have seen it, maybe you didn't find it as funny as I did, or it just didn't have any sort of lasting impact with you. But for me, it really did, and it's one of those films I had to think about, and I'm like, why is this a film that I love so much more than a lot of people, or more than I, admittedly probably should, because, I can look at this objectively and say it's not, like, the perfect movie. It's not a great, this isn't Titanic, like this isn't, or any of those other movies that I just said. Like, this isn't a movie that's like a general consensus we can all agree is excellent filmmaking. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, why do I love this so much? And there's 2 different things. There's 2 kind of thoughts that came to my mind with this, and so it fits into 2 different kind of baskets, and I want to kind of take a look at both of those things and explore the idea of these movies that come from these groups and why they mean so much to me, or for you, the movies that fit these criteria for you, why maybe those movies mean a lot to you. The first thing is that this is what I call or consider like a childhood movie. This is one of those movies that as a young kid, as a family, we watched this a lot. Like, this was one of those movies, like, if it's a Friday night and we're just home from school and we're, hanging out, we're having dinner or whatever, and then we're winding down before bed, my parents might just throw on Rat Race. They might have thrown on, whatever, there was a couple movies that were kind of in that rotation, and so it's just a movie that we watched a lot as a family, and I just have good kind of memories of, I guess, kind of spending that time like as a family watching this movie, but also just there was times I probably would just throw it on by myself because I just had so much fun with the movie. And I think that part of it is, again, I think it's the nostalgia. I think it's the idea of that was a movie that you watched as a family. But I also, in terms of why I think it like clicked so much for me, or why I formed, why I had a lot of fun with the film, is because I think there is something to be said for kind of when you're a young kid, you kind of develop the humor of your parents. Like if they find something super funny, like that's where you kind of develop your humor from. And so I just kind of, I knew that my parents found this funny, so I found it funny. And it's interesting because because I thought about this too, where looking at it, I should have looked up on Letterboxd. I should have looked at like how many people have even rated it or logged it on Letterboxd, because again, I can't imagine this is like a super popular film that so many people, like 90% of people on Letterboxd have seen. Like I know it's not pushing the billion watch club or whatever. And so I was thinking, I was like, why did my parents even know about this movie? Like, why was this one of their, like, a movie that they loved? And I'm admittedly not, I kind of know the name, Jerry Zucker, the director, but I wasn't super familiar with him until just kind of putting this kind of doc together and doing a little bit of research and looking at it and realizing that he directed both Airplane and Top Secret. I know for a fact I do have the DVD for Top Secret, and so it's one that I'm probably going to watch in the next couple days for my comedy video. That's the next video probably coming out on this channel. So I'll probably going to watch that. And then Airplane, I'm not 100% positive if we still have the DVD, but I know that we watched it a bunch as a kid. Yeah, I'm pretty sure actually. I'm pretty sure I've got it somewhere back there. But so those were just, I think those were movies that I think my parents probably just kind of really liked those two, and so I'm sure they kind of just liked a lot of just Jerry Zucker's comedies. And so I know for a fact we watched those two, not as much as we watched Rat Race, but we did watch those two a bunch as a kid. And then I also found out that Jerry Zucker also directed Ghost, the Demi Moore, is it, oh, this is awkward that I'm drawing a blank on. Is it Patrick Swayze? I think I'm drawing a blank on because I'm not super familiar with it other than kind of like the parodies that you see in Community or other TV shows. The Simpsons probably has a parody of it, but that's not a comedy, so that's we didn't watch that as a family. But that is another Jerry Zucker film, and then it's just kind of these three comedies, and that's what he's best known for. And so it's just an interesting situation where I think my parents kind of really gravitated towards Jerry Zucker's style of comedy. They liked his movies, and so Rat Race got added to the rotation. And then for some reason as a kid, that's the one of the three that we would watch a decent amount. Rat Race is the one that really stuck for me, and it's the one that I really fell in love with.
Look at us go. We are zooming.
I told you, we're hauling ass.
We're hauling ass. Alrighty.
Guess what I got back there?
You just told me. Ass. We're hauling ass. And
I mentioned this same kind of topic a couple videos, or maybe the last video on my channel, where I was introducing the comedy preview for the themed Letterboxd 4 series that I'm doing, and I talked about it in there that I've got a good buddy that I used to, when he lived closer, we would go and we would watch movies together, and he was showing me this movie that he loved, and it fits this category. It's a childhood movie for him. And so he's showing me this movie, and he loves it. Like, he absolutely is. He's dying at all the jokes. He's having, I can tell while we're watching this, he's having so much fun with this film. And I remember watching it and thinking, like, it wasn't bad. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a bad movie, but it was one that I was like, it's okay, but I'm not getting what you're finding so funny, or I'm not getting what you're just loving about this film. And then that's kind of the first time that I think I came to the realization of this movie that he was showing me was one of his family's movies. They watched it a bunch as kids, and so they just kind of had that attachment to that film. And then you show me, and at this time when I was watching, I was probably like 25 maybe at the time, and he's showing it to me. So you're showing like a 25-year-old, and I'm watching this being like, I'm just not getting it. I'm not getting the attachment that you're getting from this film. And that's okay, because clearly you have this attachment from when you were a kid, and you have fond, great memories of this movie that I'm not necessarily getting. But it's like, that was when I kind of had that realization of, we all kind of have these movies that are like our movies that we remember watching as a kid. And there's this thing that goes viral, I want to say on TikTok. It's usually, I see one a month maybe or so, but it's someone that they're just like, they'll post, it's like slide, and it's usually 25 movies, and it's the caption or whatever will say something along the lines of like, I swear I'm the only one that's seen these films. And it's all of these kind of obscure random films, and you look back and you're like, oh, I've seen a couple of them, but whoever's posting this, they're posting them because like those are their childhood movies that they love, and they kind of think that maybe they were like, they're not super popular, but because they loved them as kids, they feel like they're these great movies. And that's just kind of an interesting thought for me, of looking back and seeing these movies that like I remember loving as a kid, and maybe I haven't seen them in 20 years because I'm like, oh, maybe they won't age well. But it's like, just looking back and remembering that you still loved them from, and some of them you loved them as a kid, and they translate and they continue on to when you're an adult, and it's still just a movie that you're passionate about and that you love. And that's what Rat Race is. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about with this film, that part of the reason I love it so much, is I realized that, especially as a kid, but even now, like to this day, I'm a sucker for a quotable comedy. A comedy that, is usually these quotable comedies, they're 90 minutes, they're these quick and easy things, and the jokes are just kind of very quotable lines, things that you can walk up to a friend and you can just say lines from the movie, and you can have a conversation with them of just saying movie quotes. And so, I mean, I made a quick little list, and this took me maybe 15 seconds to come up with like some of these films: Dodgeball, Hot Rod, Anchorman, Dumb and Dumber, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Clue, 21 Jump Street, Deadpool, School of Rock. Like, those were the first that came to mind in like 20 seconds of just thinking of like movies that are like, that you love, and it's because you can just kind of quote them. They're just like there's something about being able to, it's been so long since I've seen Anchorman, right? Talking about that as an example. I remember seeing Anchorman a long time ago. I could still just walk up to it, buddy, or just in conversation with someone, and you can say like, oh, you ate the whole wheel of cheese. Like, I'm not even mad. That's impressive. Like, just whatever the quote is, and you can have this conversation through just dumb quotes. And that's the same thing with, we talked about Dodgeball a couple times on the, last month in the sports video, where Dodgeball is one of my favorite sports movies because of just how quotable it is. And usually it's, and the important thing with it being a quotable comedy is it also has to be like a dumb comedy, like a dumb quotable comedy. Putting it all together really just kind of completes and makes it this unique experience. And that, that Dodgeball is that, and Hot Rod and all these other films that I just listed, and Rat Race absolutely falls into that. There are so many times where I can just walk up to a buddy and say like, I'm winning, and you can just quote the lines from this movie. There, and I mean, and then there's like some of the quotes or some of the moments from this film that like have just lasted with me for all these years. I still remember the first time I saw Rat Race and learning the term prairie dogging, when she says I'm prairie dogging it, and instantly like that becoming not just like a dumb kind of quote that you can just say, right, when you're quoting the movie, but like that's just become like a phrase for me, that I've been saying for the rest, ever since I seen it for the first time. Like, that's a phrase that has just entered into my vocabulary of saying that you're prairie dogging it.
Dad, I'm prairie dogging it.
What the hell does that mean?
Like when a prairie dog sticks his head in and out of the ground.
Ow! Ow!
There's so many different, like, just quotable lines, just dumb quotes in this movie that you can just, it's just anytime you're watching it, you on rewatches, and I think that's what makes these comedies so rewatchable, is you just get enjoyment every time those lines come up. When it comes to that next line and you're quoting it and you're saying it as you're watching the movie, it's just a fun experience that just makes me happy. And so I think those are the two things why Rat Race works so well for me, is A, the childhood movie factor, and then B, the quotable comedy. Putting those together, it just creates a fun experience. And going alongside with kind of the quotable nature of the film, this film works so well. There's kind of I'll kind of combine these into like the last thing here of it's an ensemble comedy where you have these characters, they're all having these unique lives at the beginning, and that's the beginning of the movie. Is you're seeing all of these characters, they kind of get brought together for a couple minutes, and then they all split up again. And so it's this movie where you're just cutting around from character to character to character. And if you just kind of cut this movie up and you just followed one character at a time, their story, every character is maybe like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of screen time, like from when they leave the casino to when they meet back up again at the end of the film. Everyone's getting 10-15 minutes of story, and so it's like not that much, but the fact that you're able to have so many different groups, these different groups that you're just bouncing from person to person to person, like, the description says that it's like 6 people, but it ends up being a little bit more than 6, and as the film goes on, more people are kind of joining in the race, and so it's like, and then you're still kind of cutting back to the billionaires, Donald Sinclair and all of his, the bettors that are watching the game, and you're just cutting around to so many different people and characters, and it's one of those that I've watched films before where there's multiple storylines like this and you're constantly bouncing from person to person, and sometimes it gets annoying because you've got something really good happening here and then it'll bounce to kind of like a less interesting character or storyline that just is intriguing to you. That's not what Rat Race is to me. It'll bounce from person to person, and you're so invested in whatever shenanigans each group is getting up to as they're all trying to race to this final destination in New Mexico. And so you get this situation where you have, again, at least 6 different groups, right? And you have to make it unique and make it worth kind of bouncing around from person to person. And so what ends up happening is you have to create, in all of these different storylines, you have to create these unique set pieces.
There's a bathroom in the back.
The latch is broken. Anybody could just come in.
So what? You ain't got nothing the other Lucys haven't seen already.
Not necessarily.
Please, will you stop screaming? Damn!
And that in and of itself becomes part of the comedy or part of the joke. Some of the ones that just like stick out to me is, the big one is like Owen when he gets kind of kicked out from the taxi. He's trying to take the taxi and he gets kicked out in the desert, and he happens to stumble upon a tour bus for an I Love Lucy convention. Just such an absurd random thing that also spawns so many quotable moments, from when he's in the bathroom and he's taking drawing a blank on his name, but the bus driver taking all of his clothes, and then on the bus you get all of the Lucys, and they have so many quotable lines and moments. So I mean, that's just kind of one set piece. You get Vera and, is it Meryl? Is that her daughter's name, I think, in the film, where they end up kind of in the I don't know what you call it, the bullet car or whatever, where they're trying to break the sound barrier, trying to be the fastest humans travel or whatever, and they sneak into that car, take off, and so then obviously once they get out of it, they're a little loopy, and then they as they're kind of loopy and kind of dizzy, and they stumble upon like a psych ward bus, and then they kind of get ushered onto that bus thinking that, that they're crazy. So just like another, they have a unique, the biggest one, probably the funniest one, is the Pear family when they're driving, after prairie dogging it. They try and, because the daughter is obviously embarrassed, and they're like, oh, a Barbie museum, let's stop at the Barbie museum, and they go, and it turns out that it's a Nazi Barbie museum. And then just the absurdity of being here at this museum honoring a Nazi Barbie, leaving there, and then kind of getting chased straight into like a World War II memorial service. Just so many different absurd things that each of these characters are going through that make it just the quotes obviously are part of it, but then just the set pieces themselves just become such a funny part of the movie, and everything just in terms of the comedy, it's all clicking together. Again, I talked about it being kind of like an ensemble acting. There's so many great, in my head I just think of, and I didn't even write it's Brecken. Is it Brecken? I'm drawing a blank on what his name is, but I always just thought of him as the main character of the film, because I think he is kind of the one that's playing the game a little bit differently, especially at the beginning, and then he kind of turns into, full crazy, with everyone else like really going for this $2 million. But I always kind of thought of him as the main character of the film, and then I'm looking at it on Letterboxd, and I think he's like 9th or 10th build, because it's such a wide ensemble that there's so many different names, there's so many different people. I talked about I didn't mention, like Cuba Gooding Jr., Wayne Knight doesn't have a whole lot, but he's got a couple scenes. And then, and as I was looking at this, there's a lot of them I'm not super familiar. I don't know everyone's name. Amy Smart is another name. There's a couple of these characters that, I don't necessarily know them from much outside of Rat Race, but then they're still in so many other films. So it's just a wide ensemble. The star character for me is Rowan Atkinson, and it's one of those where I look back at it, and it's because I think a lot of people know Rowan Atkinson as Mr. Bean. Like, that is what people know Rowan Atkinson for. I haven't seen any of, like I said, I think there's a TV show, and I think there's a couple Mr. Bean movies. I haven't seen those. What I know Rowan Atkinson from, what I know his comedy from, is Rat Race, and it's Johnny English. Those are that's what I know of Rowan Atkinson from, and I loved him from those. And so it's just, he's so fun and quotable in this movie that he stands out amongst the ensemble, but everyone in the ensemble is so good, and it all just comes together so well for me. And so it's just one of those that I know not a lot of people will love this, but for me it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Begin, commence, start moving. Theoretically, you have been racing for about 40 seconds, and so far Mr. Schaefer is winning because he's nearest to the door.
So for the rating, Rat Race, it stays a 5-star. It is a 5-star movie for me. Is this entering my Letterboxd 4? No. I think there is something that you can say, and I kind of said this about in my Sinister review too, where it's a movie that means a lot, or it's special to me for the specific memories that I have watching it, but I can objectively look at it and say it's not in the same tier as these other movies. And I can say that about Rat Race. I can comfortably say it's a 5 out of 5 movie for me. I love it, but I'm not going all the way crazy saying it's better than Parasite and kicking it out of my Letterboxd 4. It has its special place in my heart. Not really going to be a Letterboxd 4 movie for me, but it was one that I always knew when I made this series of the Letterboxd 4 series. I knew I was going to do an episode on Rat Race because it is fun and I do like talking about it, but it's not quite to that level. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments if you've seen Rat Race, and if you like it anywhere near as much as I do. But also let me know, because I'm just curious. I'm interested to hear what your childhood movies are. What are the movies that you were obsessed with as a kid, and to this day you still love it, and you know that it's maybe not the most popular film, but you're just kind of unapologetically a fan of that movie, and it's one of your favorite films. Let me know those down below in the comments. I would love to see kind of the different answers that we get on that, and see the different films that, I would love to look at your films, your suggestions, and say oh, maybe it is a film I've seen, or maybe it's a film I haven't even heard of, but it's one that it's not necessarily my favorite, but it's just cool that you have that connection to that film. So I kind of just want to hear some of those films down below in the comments. And if you would like to like this video and then subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes in this Finding My Letterboxd 4 series, or any of the other different series that I have going on this channel, I would greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.